Good day. I love that music. And I think every time I hear that song now, it's called Going Coastal. I'll think of Cheryl, who was with us last week, Cheryl Jones with Jones and Company, and who was just a delight to have. I hope you guys have had a good week since we were here with you last week. Thank you for joining us again. Let's see. We're going to talk today rip currents that will impact our futures rolled through the fabric of our society last week, with 3 deaths that dominated the news cycle on respective days. Associate Justice of the Supreme Court Ruth Bader Ginsburg, second woman to serve on the United States Supreme Court, died at the age of 87. She was known for her forceful dissents, and she was tagged with the nickname The Notorious, RBG. The Breonna Taylor case went to the grand jury, delivered its ruling in the case of the 26-year-old Black woman killed in her own home by a Louisville police officer. They refused to charge any of the officers who shot at her with murder or manslaughter. And then the Kansas Comet, Gail Sayers, died at the age of 77. If you didn't know Gail Sayers, you missed probably one of the best football players there ever been. He played college football for the Kansas Jayhawks. He compiled over 4,000 yards in just 3 years with them and was a consensus All-American twice. In his NFL rookie season, he set a league record by scoring 22 touchdowns, including a record-tying 6 touchdowns in one game, gained 2,200 yards. But what I'm going to talk about with Gail Sayers when we get to our special guest is not just what he did on the field, but what he and a guy named Brian Piccolo, his teammate, did for the National Football League and probably for the country. So I'm going to move right into the introduction of our guests, my 2 roundtable guests, Barbara Wallace Edwards. Barbara is from Birmingham, Alabama. I think she may be in Birmingham, Alabama right now. And then Mychal Walker, who is from Atlanta, Georgia. So let's see. Barbara is retired from Blue Cross. Barbara, how you doing this morning?
I'm doing well, Thom. Good morning to you and Mychal and Toni. How are you? Everyone doing?
Doing well, Barbara. Hope
I'm
you
doing
are
good,
too.
and thank you. Yeah, Thom, 3 weeks in a row. This is truly a record. I'm home 3 weeks in a row now, so I don't think this ever happened since retirement.
We'll blame it on the COVID.
Yes, absolutely.
So what's happening in your world, Barbara?
I'm excited about some fall weather, Thom. Finally, we're getting some cooler temperatures, and I think the highs this week are going to be in the 70s for the remainder of the week and lows in the 50s. That's my kind of weather, so I'm pretty excited right now.
It is nice. You know, I go for my bike ride pretty much every morning, and this morning it was cool and crisp, and
yes,
it was a nice ride. It wasn't all hot and steamy. And our other guest is Mychal Walker. Mychal is the president of the Walker Agency, a full-service insurance brokerage firm. Mychal always brings us insurance tips. Mychal, what's happening in your world today?
Well, good morning, everyone. Thom, it's interesting. You can tell, as everybody knows, it's political season, but it's interesting. The White House announced 2 executive orders yesterday. One is preventing surprise billing, and the other one is protecting pre-existing conditions. But it has minimal impact because surprise billing will take an act of Congress in order to take effect. And protecting pre-existing conditions, that's already protected under the Affordable Care Act.
Which they want to get rid of.
Exactly. But this just comes out ahead of time. Now, I don't know what everybody knows about surprise billing, but a quick and dirty example of that is that say that you are scheduled to go to a hospital for a surgery, and according to the plan that your agent signed you up for, He told you which hospital to go to, which doctor to go to, and all of that would be in network. So you do that, you set your appointment, you go to the hospital that's in network with your physician that's in network. However, on that particular day, something comes up and the physician isn't able to do it. He may have another emergency. He could have been sick himself, could have been out on the golf course, whatever. He called his buddy, go in and do this surgery for me. Buddy goes in, does the surgery. Everything works well, except for when you come out, you get a surprise bill that's triple what you thought it would be. And the reason being is because the physician that actually performed the surgery, which you had no impact on because you were out on the anesthesia, was not in network. And his anesthesiologist, which works with him, wasn't in network either. So you're charged at a higher rate because they weren't in network. But you did everything you're supposed to do. And so that's been an issue ongoing, and our association have been fighting that. We got it approved here in Georgia, but this is what they're doing and trying to make it national so there will be no surprise billing in a situation like that. Then, of course, everybody knows what pre-existing conditions are and how the Affordable Care Act took care of that because insurance companies were declining people for health care coverage if they already had diabetes or high blood pressure or something like that.
So if it's already covered in the Affordable Care Act, what was the purpose of the executive order?
PR.
Okay.
You know, it's a political season. Okay. It's the, you will see him doing a lot of different things now to look like he's on top of stuff, you know? And so by doing pre-existing condition, he's trying to kind of tie it to the pandemic and say, we know that people may be impacted or affected because of coronavirus. So I'm going to make sure that this is in place. But again, it's already covered, you know? And the same thing with and like I said, with the pre-existing conditions, it takes an act of Congress in order to make that law.
Wow. Surprise billing. I think all billing is a surprise these days.
Yeah.
I got 2 shots in my knee and it was $2,000. And it's like, this must be some bionic stuff you put in my knee, you know?
I received my physical therapy bill. I received my physical therapy bill the other day, and it's all surprise billing. You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but was it covered though?
Only part of it. My part was still a surprise.
Well, let me say that mine, after all the, I guess it was covered. So after all the deductions and whatever, it came to about $250, which still is about $125 a shot. So,
right.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. I think that it's interesting. Now that we're on this, I'm just going to jump into it for a second. But I've written a script, and it's called The Gatekeeper, and it's called The Gatekeeper because it's the near future, and healthcare is off the rails, and so the Congress appoints one person in every state that can oversee all high-end hospitalization, medical situations, and so on and so forth. I had this guy read it yesterday, and he really liked it, but. He asked me why did I come up with this? And I came up with it primarily because I don't see where we're going to get out of the situation we're in terms of healthcare without something pretty dramatic down the road. You know, we're afraid of socialism, and so I don't know. I know that I'm been in the union, the Actors Guild. We've always had great health care, and it's slowly eroded and chipped away at. And it of course, the older you get, the scarier it gets because that's when you really need it more so than when you're younger. So. My 2 cents. So let's talk a little bit about these 3 individuals. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, just the first Jewish woman, the second woman, period, to be on the Supreme Court. the notorious RBG. She was known because for her forceful dissents. And I think the thing that's really interesting is, you know, this woman was a great American, did a lot for America. And I mean, she's not even dead 24 hours and there's a controversy about how or when or who will replace her on the court. And I say it's a controversy because it was certainly different from what happened under the
4
Obama
years ago.
administration.
Yeah.
So, Barbara, you want to jump in on that?
Yeah, I was going to say, 4 years ago, I know there were those who were opposed to Obama naming a Supreme Court candidate
Garland.
nominee.
Yeah, Merrick. Yeah.
Yes, right. So, what changed in 4 years? It is obvious that they didn't feel like the current president should choose the Supreme Court nominee at that time. So why now? That is my question, and I think that's everyone's question.
You got to ask Lindsey Graham and Mitch McConnell. Mychal?
Well, to answer Barbara's question, what changed is the fact that the Republicans are in the majority of the Senate. That's what changed.
But
the
they
thing.
were
They have the
then as
power.
well.
They were then, and they blocked it. That's what I'm saying. They were
Yeah.
in power then, and they blocked it. So now they
Right.
want to move forward with putting this nominee in place, and that's just following political parties.
Well, that's because their president is a Republican and he's in the White House. So that's what it boils down to. So they can do that now. So,
well, and I think it goes back to what you said earlier about the executive orders. What can we do to try to garner some more votes before November the 3rd? And I think it's 35 days left before the election. And so we'll probably see all kinds of machinations between now and November the 3rd.
I'm sure the debate tonight is going to be very interesting. And maybe that'll come up during the debate tonight.
I'm sure it will.
Yeah, I'm sure it will. Just from looking at it from a perspective of objectivity, it seems as though the court is already heavily tilted towards conservatism. Just to make sure that you cover all bases and each side is properly represented, I myself wouldn't have a problem with allowing a judge with more liberal leanings fill that spot so that you can have somewhat of a balance and different perspectives on issues that come up. It goes back to the old saying in corporate America that if a president of a corporation picks everybody that thinks like him, then what good is it for the organization? You only have a one-sided view. That's what I'm looking at.
Well, Mychal, that's a very logical approach, and unfortunately, some people don't follow logic.
Well, true.
I think, and let me just say, yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I don't think they'll do that. Obviously not. They've already selected a woman, which was interesting in itself, because obviously the woman vote is in danger of not being what it was in 2016.
Right.
And so this is a way to try and bring more women into the fold. I don't know. I just think that this is the world we're living in, and this is the world we'll continue to live in, regarding, when we, and I mean we, the people of the United States, when we allowed things to go to be designated as red states and blue states and so on and so forth, how can you not be divided?
Right.
When we refer to people as liberals and conservatives and so on and so forth, I just think it just sets up a division there that will continue to be there, and the anger that seems to be embedded in certain segments of the society is scary, quite frankly.
It
Um,
is.
um,
And it's not just anger. I mean, it's hatred. It's just pure hate. That's the scary part.
well, maybe it was always there, and they just needed an instrument that would
True.
allow them to express themselves
So
in that
true.
way. Let
So
me
true.
say, I got a couple of quotes from Justice Ginsburg. I loved her. She said, when I'm sometimes asked, when will there be enough women on the Supreme Court? And my answer is, when there are 9. People are shocked, but there'd been 9 men and nobody ever raised a question about it.
True. True.
And she says on leadership, and this is probably a lesson for all of us, she said, fight for the things that you care about, but do it in a way that will lead others to join you.
Right.
Yes.
So let's go to the Breonna Taylor situation and the grand jury and the attorney general made his talk. I think it was surprising for some that the attorney general was a young black man who it was later revealed is married to Mitch McConnell's niece, I think. And it was also alleged that many of the facts, and he said that he put a great emphasis on the facts, but that many of the facts did not come out in the grand jury hearing. Mychal, you want to jump in there?
Well, yes, couple things. He probably did look at the facts that he presented.
Exactly.
Okay. And anybody that has had any experience in the court, they give the jury instructions about what they can make a decision on. So if you don't present the whole case and only present a part of the case that lines up with what your end game is, then that's what they decide on. The question that I have is, why were the police there in the very first place?
Absolutely.
Okay. Why was there a warrant signed to begin with, a no-knock warrant signed to go there when the person that they were supposedly looking for was already in custody? There was a breakdown in communication that falls right back to the people that's doing the administration of the police department. So they never should have been there, number one. And then to come out and say that he shot at a police officer, mind you, they're breaking down a door at 2 o'clock in the morning, and they're in plain clothes. How do you know that that's a police officer coming in and not somebody that's really coming in to rob you or what have you? So to say that he shot at a police, I think that would be the natural response from anyone that's being broken in early in the morning like that. I just think that there's a lot that's in the cover up. I don't know if you guys heard this. I heard this early on that the lead prosecutor had tried to get the person that they were actually looking for to say that Breonna was involved in the drug dealing sheen. And he
Yes.
said, no, I'm not going to do that. She had nothing to do with it. Then they tried to say the Postal Service gave them a tip because he was sending things there to the house. He says, I sent clothes there. I sent personal items there. There's nothing against the law about doing that. I think he said he sent some money there. Okay. So it's a lot of convolution going on here and a lot of different things to try to weed through and figure out what are the true facts there. And we all know recently that they have broken protocol by allowing the police that were involved in the shooting to go into the apartment there because they're not allowed to go in there after an incident. But he was in there going in looking for bullet casings and stuff. So,
right. Barbara?
I agree with everything Mychal just said. I mean, why were they there from the very beginning? This whole case is just like they fumbled it. They didn't know that there was someone else in the apartment with her, even though they are saying they were surveying the the apartment all night. They've been patrolling and watching, but didn't realize that there was anyone there in the apartment with her. So they were surprised when they broke through the door and there were two people there instead of just her alone. So the entire case doesn't really make a lot of sense. They had no business being there. She was not even the targeted person they were looking for. They said they thought maybe she was hiding money uh, that he may have given her, but that's not a reason to do a no knock warrant in the middle of the night. That's just, again, the whole thing is just crazy.
Well, and they're supposed to announce themselves, and they did. They have one witness who said they did announce themselves. They had 12 witnesses that said that they didn't hear anything, but those 12 weren't allowed to testify
Right.
Before the grand jury. And it's also interesting that they haven't found any. The officers aren't charged with anything, but the city has already agreed to pay her family $12 million. Which sort of says, well, why are you paying them $12 million if you didn't do anything wrong?
Right. Right.
So anyway, let's. I think the thing about that and the whole Black Lives Matter thing, and people want to say, well, you're against the police and so on and so forth. Since the whole Black Lives Matter thing started, I mean, how many people have been killed at the hands of the police?
Mm-hmm.
Even when you have video footage showing that there was no reason for it to even escalate to that point. I mean, you got video footage of a man with his knee on a guy's neck, and guy says, I can't breathe.
Right.
And he just leaves his knee on his neck until he kills him. So I think that when those guys, I read a thing today about the National Football League and the attendance being down, the television audience numbers being down, and they're attributing that to, some people are, quote, boycotting because the guys kneel for the flag and so on and so forth. And I just say, so be it. It's America. It's a great country, and we all have our rights. We all have we can support or not support what we choose to support or not support. And I'm okay with that.
Thom, let me just add one comment about that, since you brought up the kneeling. And as we all know, it was never about the flag.
Exactly.
From a disrespect standpoint,
right.
Nor was it disrespecting the military. It was raising the consciousness to social injustice and police brutality.
Mm-hmm.
I hear a lot of people say, well, they don't think that sports venues are the right place to do that. Well, my question is, what is the right place?
Where is it? Mm-hmm.
Okay. Back when Dr. Martin Luther King, when he was leading civil rights marches and boycotting, people said that wasn't the right thing to do. But had he not done that, we wouldn't have made the progress that we've made. And what I try and tell people, that they're only using a platform that they have to bring attention to them.
Right.
Because if they did not have the uniform on and was not in front of national television audiences, and they went out to just try and call a press conference and bring attention to it, nobody would pay attention because of the lack of venue. So just kind of back a little bit and ask, what is the right venue if that's not it? And would it get the same result? One thing is for sure, it did raise the consciousness, and it's got everybody talking about it.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Couple of football related things. There's been a bipartisan bill in the House of Representatives with Anthony Gonzalez, a Republican from Ohio, and Emmanuel Cleaver, a Democrat from Missouri, have co-sponsored a bill which would write student athletes' ability to seek representation and sign endorsement contracts into law. Now, I just from politics being what it is, I doubt that this has a chance to get maybe out of the House, but certainly won't pass the Senate. But it would give college football players, college athletes, the ability to have representation, and they could sign endorsement contracts. Mychal, you got some thought on that?
Well, that kind of comes back to what we said last I think it was the last show we talked about with coronavirus, give the players a little bit more credibility in their stance. And I said, if anything, I think it may help them from the standpoint of getting paid because it shows that they're putting their health at risk for the sake of economy for everybody that gets paid from their labor, so to speak. And it is a labor, it's a job for them. I doubt it'll get passed, especially at this particular time, but at least it's on the radar, you know? And I think they can build upon this to justify what they're asking for.
I think they're starting to chip away at that whole situation. And I think that, I don't know what the polls say, who cares what the polls say, but I think that the majority of people think that the kids could get a little better deal. I mean, they're playing football right now because they don't really have a choice.
That's right.
It's
putting
not
their
like
lives
the
on the line.
guys.
Right.
Exactly.
They're putting their lives on the line, and all they're getting out of it is an education, really. So I think they deserve to be some compensation.
And we all agree that it's complicated. I mean, hey, we'll sit here and say, well, maybe they shouldn't be playing, but come Saturday at 2:00, we'll watch the game because we're football fans. And so, yeah, it's a complicated situation. Speaking of football, let me talk a little bit about Gail Sayers for a minute. Gail Sayers was just, to me, is one of the best football players ever. He was just incredible. But the thing that was, I don't know if you guys, maybe you saw the movie Brian Song.
Yes.
Yes.
And about he and Brian Piccolo. He and Brian Piccolo were the first black and white roommates in the National Football League with the Chicago Bears. They were both running backs. They started having the players' room on the road by position, and that put them together. And it was just an incredible story. Billy D. Williams played Gail Sayers, and he gave this incredible speech at the end, which was actually a speech that Gail Sayers gave. And he said, I love Brian Piccolo, and I'd like all of you to love him too. Tonight, when you hit your knees to pray, please ask God to love him too. And there's a great story about Brian Piccolo when there was a guy named Darrell Hill. Darrell Hill was the first African-American football player in the Deep South at a major white institution. He was at Maryland. And they said that the roughest place for them to go play was at Wake Forest. They gave him a really rough time at Wake Forest. After the game, and Brian Piccolo played at Wake Forest. After the game, Brian Piccolo went over and got Darrell Hill, brought him over in front of the Wake Forest student section, and stood there and put his arm around him. And it shut everybody up. That, you know, I love this guy. This guy's a great guy. You're not treating him fair. And that's the kind of guy that Brian Piccolo was. And that's the kind of story that Gail Sayers and Brian Piccolo were able to tell to the American people. Either one of you want to comment, Barbara?
That movie, Brian's Song, was probably one of my favorite movies of all times. And still, when I watch it today, I cry. It's a real tearjerker for me. But that really brought a lot. I think a lot of people learned a lot from that movie about racial relations and how, you know, blacks and white could get along. And that was back in 1971, I think, when the movie came out. So it was really kind of unprecedented at the time. Many of the schools didn't even have black players playing in college on their teams at that time. So it was a very wonderful movie. Great friendship between those two guys.
He died in June of 1970, and the story read yesterday was written by one of his daughters. He had 3 daughters, and she said she watched the movie when it came out the first time, and she's never been able to watch it again. She refuses to watch it again. She was 3.5 years old when her father passed. But a great story, two great men, and it's maybe where we need to focus our attention as opposed to all the other craziness that's going on.
Yeah.
Well, Thom, I'd like to comment on that a little bit. You know, and this is about sports and race relations. You know, it's interesting how there's a parallel between race relations and sports. You go back to the Olympics when the three track stars held their fists up in defiance of Hitler to show that Black people were not inferior. But one that comes close to home here in Alabama, you remember everybody knows about Bear Bryant. And when he first got to Alabama, he wanted to integrate the football team and was told he couldn't. And he scheduled a football game with his good friend John McKay at USC, who had Sam the Bam Cunningham. And they played in Birmingham. And USC ran all over Alabama, and Sam Cunningham had a fantastic day. And after that game, Bear Bryant got Sam Cunningham and took him over to the Alabama locker room and say, "Gentlemen, this is a football player. You need to congratulate him on the way he played." And they said that Sam Cunningham did more to promote racial relations in Alabama than anybody else did. And I find it interesting how throughout our lives we have seen the intertwine of race relations and sports.
I agree with that last part. I think of some of that Sam the Bam Cunningham story is a myth. Auburn was the first one to sign a Black player,
Right.
in Henry Harris in 1968, and then James Owens in 1969. Auburn played schools with Black players in the middle 60s. So I think the difference is Bear Bryant, that story has grown. And I don't know how much of it is true, but the fact that he did this and they were first, none of that part is true. So I just say that because I was around then and I was a part of that.
You know.
So, but I've heard that story over and over again, and I always try to correct it. Well, look, we need to move on to our special guest. I'm going to have you guys. I'm going to do this, do the sponsorship message, and then I'll bring you guys back. So as we talk with Miss Vines this morning. So let's see. Our show is, as always, is sponsored by Best Girl. Best Girl is a consulting firm that provides customized leadership, access and inclusion, public relations, communications, and organizational consulting services. Our clients include Fortune 500 companies, utilities, higher education institutions, small businesses, and associations. Best Girl's team of consultants are led by Joyce Gilly Gossom, and we partner with business and educational clients to promote organizational effectiveness, communication, motivation, and leadership, with always an impact on the bottom line. Best Girl's customized consulting services include strategic planning, corporate communication, executive coaching, fundraising, and economic development. If you want to look up Best Girl, you can go to bestgirl.com, the website, or Best Girl on Facebook. And so now we're going to move on to what we call the G list. Hollywood has its A list, and Tuesdays with Thom has its G list. And the G list is where everybody is a star. And our special guest today is Antoinette Vines from Mercy Deliverance Ministries, MDM, and which focuses on health and wellness to not only citizens of Alabama, but to those living in what many call paradise, Hawaii. So we'd like to have Toni Vines. Good morning.
Good morning, sir. How are you?
I'm doing just fine. And how are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you.
So tell us a little bit about Mercy Deliverance Ministries and what you're doing.
Well, I just want to first of all say good morning and just thank you all for the opportunity to be here. and just to have the opportunity to share basically what God has placed on my heart. Mercy Delivers Ministries is a nonprofit 501c3 organization. This week we kind of celebrated our first year. I filed for thank you.
Great.
I filed for establishment last fall, and last summer, and that documentation came in around September. So we're just thankful that God is growing us, and we're finally getting on the ground and do what He's called us to do. But Mercy is just an extension of what God has shown me and displayed throughout my own life, in that we just attempt to meet people exactly where they are in whatever situation that they are in, pointing them to Christ and helping them walk through their situation and to break the bondages of sin and poverty, those long-time generational things that a lot of us and so many of us have grown up in, to find their true identity in Christ and to fulfill that call and that purpose for which God has placed them here. So that's our ultimate goal. And that's a mouthful, but in saying that, how does that practically play out every day? And God has placed it on our hearts to just provide nutritious foods to people in our community, as well as healthcare. You all were just speaking to the extent of healthcare and the complications that we are experiencing and that we've pretty much always experienced. But we have to meet people at their fundamental needs. You can tell me about Jesus and tell me how much He loves us, but until I show you Jesus, it goes in one ear and out the other. So that's our ultimate goal. And God, like I said, has us initially starting with food delivery as well as healthcare eventually.
So can you tell us a little bit about the food delivery part of it and where you do it? Because I know that you not only do this in Alabama, you do this in a far off place as well. So let's hear a little bit about that.
Well, the model that God has placed on my heart is to have a mobile grocery vehicle. So we're taking a school bus and we're having it converted into a full service grocery store. So transportation can be a problem for many for different reasons. Here in Alabama or Birmingham, we don't have a massive public transportation system. And so it just seems logical that we can take these services to people. And then there are sick and shut-in people that can't get out for various reasons, the elderly and just people can't get out for illnesses. Then an extension of that is to basically be able to deliver these groceries and services to people as well. But we have in the past, we would always attempt to have people come into our neighborhoods. We expect people to come and get what they need. But if we can humble ourselves to go to them, we can identify with you, we can meet you where you are in your neighborhood, bring these services to you to help make them more accessible. So again, there's a mobile grocery vehicle that we're retrofitting a school bus, turning into a full service grocery vehicle. And the model is to have that grocery vehicle travel throughout the communities. And once we get our mobile healthcare vehicle up and running, that vehicle will also accompany that grocery vehicle. So as people are coming to shop and buy their groceries, then they can also have appointments, and we'll have rotating clinics throughout that mobile clinical services. So what we basically envision is just bringing, we can all remember, I'm old enough to remember when the milk truck and the vegetable truck came to our neighborhoods. And we're trying to bring that back and just have pop-up markets and family events and cooking demonstrations and educational piece to teach people how to properly and more healthy prepare these vegetables. So there's a community and a family aspect that will go along with that as well. So we hope to maybe have a pop-up market 2 to 3 times a week once we really get going. And then again, once the healthcare services come along, those clinics will rotate. We may have a GYN clinic on 1 month. And then the next month we might have a general medicine clinic. And the next month we might have a pediatric clinic. So we're looking to local institutions and universities here. They have students and as well as residents that are also would be filling in these clinical positions. And so we've been in contact and been in talks with bringing those people on board. And we have support throughout the community to do that. So that's kind of what the model looks like here in Birmingham. And while we're working to where the work has already started on the bus, we're also working to start feeding people just in their schools and their communities. We've been in talks and waiting on scheduled food delivery right now, just to start delivering food right now while we're waiting on that work to finish on that bus. So how that translates to Hawaii is a lot of the same issues that we have here. Heart disease, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, stroke. Those are the same issues that are experienced with our neighbors in Hawaii. And there's just a subgroup population that God placed on my heart and just said, we've got to target and start championing for those group of people that are there. And those are basically COFA migrants. And we can talk about that if you like.
Okay, let me,
there's a lot to unpack.
I was around when the milkman used to come and leave the milk on your front porch.
Yes.
So, but I'd like to just comment on this. I think that normally when you say this, there's an impression that this is poor people only. You know, I know many neighborhoods in Birmingham that are nice neighborhoods. They're pretty much all Black neighborhoods, but they don't have supermarkets in those neighborhoods. They don't have commerce in those neighborhoods. And so you're really a neighborhood that needs to export all of its dollars just to have the basic food and medicine that it takes to live every day.
You are correct. And that's a good thing about our model, which I did not explain thoroughly, is that this will be quality food where anyone can stop by on their way home from work and buy. There will be a sliding scale pay system. So it depends, and it's totally on the honor system, where once you fill out the paperwork, you're put into our system at whatever level that you qualify for, whether it's SNAP benefits, whether that's the median level, or you can just pull out right for it to buy. But on your way home, I expect them to see us at our market and be able to stop by and purchase anything full right, or purchase it at whatever economic level that they qualify for.
When will the bus be ready, and when will all this kick off? Are we talking a matter of months?
That was the thing. Prior to the pandemic, we were ready to go. We were making the bus purchase and everything was on full speed. And then we were placed on quarantine. And the guy said, okay, just slow down. So with that, the gentleman, his name is Craig Hurst. He's with Gearbox Rentals. He's right here in Birmingham, and he already has a business that retrofits recreational vehicles, and he rents them. So the day I called him, how God has orchestrated everybody, he says, I'm sitting in my office praying, God, with all my dreams and visions. And he goes, and God has you call me. So all the renderings that you see on our website came out of his imagination, out of just our verbal conversations and our talks and our meetings. So with that, after the pandemic occurred, we put everything on hold and didn't buy the bus right away. But then during the pandemic, he's blown up now. So people have had to find alternative ways to travel. He's like, Toni, I've had to hire 8 people. And so now we can't get on his list until January. But the bus has been purchased. We're having to ship that bus to a place called Schoolie to have the roof elevated so that we can have a little bit more ceiling height, or just be a little bit more comfortable. So hopefully by the time all that is done, he'll be ready to take us on around the end of the year in January. But he's just booked out to January, so that's kind of put us on hold. But we are in line. So hopefully hopefully that bus will be on the road late winter, early spring. But like I said, in the meantime, we're working to get food in people's hands right now. And hopefully we'll get some confirmation with some food deliveries this week so that we can start in local schools.
Well, let Barbara and Mychal jump in here. Barbara, I think you're serving on this board of this organization. Is that correct?
I am. Yes, I am, Thom. I am honored to serve on this board. I've known Toni and her family for quite some time, and they're just remarkable individuals, and they've really inspired me to get involved with Mercy Deliverance Ministries. And so I'm truly looking forward to working very closely with them and getting this ministry up and running and going. Like you said, the past year has been super busy, just working, trying to get everything in order. And so delighted to serve with her.
Well, we're honored to have you, and that's every piece of this story has been orchestrated by God, and there's always another story that got us to where we are, and there's a whole story how Barbara and I ended up having lunch one day, and in that midst of that conversation, I'm thinking, God, why are we here? And He just opened up that door, and now she's our board secretary. So just how all that orchestrated. But Mercy's first direction was God spoke to me on a plane from Hawaii and said, "You're going back for medical missions." So these were dreams and visions that I had for years, and I had written them down and journaled them until God told me 2 years ago to go back, find them, and start praying over them. So during that process, He gave me colors, He gave me what the logo should look like, and then I got to a point where I was like, God, but what is this? I didn't quite understand because it's so disjointed. And then on the red eye, the 4 things that He told me to do was call Brian Gunn, who's now our board treasurer. He said, call Dr. Sadiq Shefra, who's an immunologist at UAB. He told me that Mercy was going to go back to Hawaii for medical missions. And then he also told me to go find an abstinence program that I had written in nursing school. So those 4 things, I got home that afternoon and started working on those. So the medical mission part, he finally gave definition and direction to what Mercy was on that plane. And then as I continued with every step of obedience, He gave me more and more definition as to what it was. So once I got home, just doing some research, I made some calls back to some wonderful people that I had just met in Hawaii, and they connected me to the lieutenant governor, to some senators, and to some other nonprofit leaders there in the community. And Barbara was actually part of my team that we were supposed to go. We were going to Hawaii in April. And we were about to meet with these leaders and just go, how can we collaborate and implement what we're trying to do in Birmingham, but implement it in such a way that's going to suit and meet your needs. So what's interesting about Hawaii is the fact that everything there mostly has to be exported. Their cost of living is, I can't remember the percentage, it's so much more expensive there to live than it is here. So with that being the case, as I dug and continued my own personal research, there's so many layers of political, I don't want to say animosity, but political differences, because you have the Native Hawaiian people whose monarch was overthrown by English people. And then after the Englishmen came over and they took over their land, then since then, the United States has come in and they're bringing in COFA migrants. So you've got your Native Hawaiians who are, and some are still would like to fight for their own sovereignty or sovereign state. And then you have the COFA migrants. And what COFA is basically the Compacts of Free Association, in which Oceania consists of Australia, Guam, Marshall Islands, Palau, all that South Pacific, those islands in that area. And that area has always been strategic as a military base. So since World War II, especially, the United States has controlled that area. The United States has entered a treaty with the Marshall Islands, Palau, Republic of Micronesia, those countries that allows the United States government to use their countries as a political base. And in exchange, the United States provides them military security for that, if you will. But in that process, and over the years since World War II, United States the government has performed all types of nuclear weapon testing. So it's ruined their soil, it's ruined their country where they really can't, fend for themselves, if you will. And so they rely basically on the United States for much of their support. So with that being the case, they've experienced all types of diseases and abnormalities, diabetes, same things that we're looking at. And the United States, as a concession under this treaty, allows their citizens to enter into the United States. Hawaii is a major gateway without a visa. So they can come in as long as they don't have a criminal record, criminal background. But once they get here, they're coming here primarily for medical services that they can't find in their home country. But once they get here, they no longer even qualify for government services. They don't qualify under the most recent Welfare Reform Act. They have been cut off from services. So they're disproportionately homeless, without medical care. In Hawaii, as a state, in and of themselves, they're estimating their cost to care for these COFA migrants alone exceeds $100 million. In the United States is only giving them, 21 a year. So that treaty is up for renewal in 2023. Hawaii doesn't quite think it's going to be renewed, but then God specifically spoke to me, we've got to go care for these people.
Okay.
And so, but there are lots of layers, political layers, even involved in that.
Let me let Mychal jump in here and comment.
Okay. Well, first of all, Toni, congratulations. And I think you are doing a fantastic job. And it's certainly a noble cause. One question I have for you, I know this is a very expensive operation. How do you go about raising financial support in order
okay, I'm sorry. I mean, cut you off.
Go ahead.
But right now, this is a charge that God has given my family now. So for the most part, every penny, most of it has come from us. God has blessed us, and we are givers. You sow. He said he gives seed to the sower. And so this is part of that sowing. So our family is 100% behind this. But in that regard, like I said, we have started the ministry, and people can donate as God leads them. And God has promised. He has a plan. It's his vision. He's obligated to provide for it. So, God didn't have a problem with money. He says, love of money is root of all evil. He says, and if you would pay your tithe and give and do what I tell you to do, you will never be without. So we're firm believers of that. This is how we've always lived our life, and we continue to do so. So God has had beautiful people come alongside of us just since the website has been live in the last month and start to give, and we appreciate. I mean, I have just cried, and God has, his faithfulness has just been unbelievable. But with that, my family, we're committed, and God has promised that he was going to provide. So it's a step of faith with every step of obedience, and he has shown himself faithful.
Toni, will you share with our viewers how they can give and how they can volunteer?
Our website, mercydm.org, www.mercydm.org. We do also have a plan for corporate sponsors. Our bus, our mobile grocery vehicle, I've been working on proposals to present to corporations. You can go to www.mercydm.org and volunteer. Browse the website. We want to find people that have gifts that they want to partner with us. We want to use your gifts. We don't want to necessarily have you conform to us. We want you to tell us about you and yourself so we can find that perfect match and that perfect place for you to volunteer. And with that, you can donate, you can give. One of the ongoing initiatives that God has placed on my heart, he told me to sell homeless care packages. And that would be an ongoing initiative. So people can go to our web store and purchase a homeless care package for $30. And what that consists of, and of course, it's a 100% donation to them, but the profits the ministry will receive to further our mission and our cost in serving others. But that homeless care package consists of a custom full-size adult fleece blanket, toiletries, socks, and we just recently put a mask in due to COVID. But it's a pretty neat thing. And as people donate those homeless care packages, we are donating those to homeless shelters throughout Birmingham. And that'll be that's one ongoing initiative that we will have. And like I said, there's also a place for corporate sponsorships. And I've been putting together proposals to present to corporations and companies. We have had some interest. And I'm thankful for that. But again, so that's coming up. So you've got volunteer services, donation opportunities, and then corporate sponsorships are also available.
Just from a logistical standpoint, you described this, and this is happening in Birmingham, Alabama. how do you manage what's going to be happening in Hawaii?
God has placed a couple of people in my heart to oversee that Hawaii operation. So with that being the case, and we also already have partners on the ground too. Home Aid Hawaii, we've been in talks with them, and we have agreed to sponsor a tiny home for a veteran, Hawaii veteran, a resident of Hawaii, a veteran that's experiencing homelessness. So where we're building, where we're not there physically, we are building and collaborating with people already there. Like I said, we were a team of us, including Barbara. We were going over in April for a health fair on Lanai, and they have been absolutely instrumental in Lanai and also in Maui County. And we were meeting with county commissioners and people there. They have also been instrumental in everything that we've done. So where we do have some connections and some inroads, and like I said, God has actually put a couple of people on my heart that can oversee that operation. And then again, we've been in talks with the local institution here where you could have residents from Birmingham to finish their education and training in Hawaii. And they have been all over it. So it's not going to be a problem.
Okay.
It's ambitious, but it's not my plan, it's God's. And he's really, the medical piece came together. I'm just not talking about it a whole lot, but it came together a whole lot easier than providing food. And it's been crazy to see how God just pulled all that together quickly. And then he shifts my attention. Now I need you to work on this. And that's been the fight. So we're looking at having residents here finish their training over there. And it won't be. And the Lieutenant Governor, Josh Green, he's a physician in and of himself. And he feels as if homelessness is just a symptom of just like diabetes or anything else, it has to be addressed. So connected us with some great people.
Okay. Well, Barbara, how did I know that you would be on that trip to Hawaii? How did I know that?
You know, Thom, you know me. Travel and community service go hand in hand with me. So
it was funny because I was like, okay, Lord, I'm gonna need some help, you know. And he says, oh, Barbara. And then so I was like, okay. And of course she was all about it, but who wouldn't be? But again, it was gonna be a jam. And she automatically, God told me she's the connector, she's that glue. And she jumped on board because I'm like, Barbara, I'm going to need you to do this. I'm going to need you to do that. I've got to do. And so she was going to be all about and all a big part of that health fair. So she wasn't just going to be a pretty face.
Well, she introduced us to you. So certainly that's one connection, and she's doing her job. So anybody got any final things you'd like to ask Toni? Toni, you got any final comment? Mychal, you got something?
Yes, I'd like to ask Toni to expound upon the high cost of medical service and the lack of insurance coverage in certain areas that you're covering. I noticed that in the profile here. Could you expound on that a little bit and tell me what you're trying to do to address the high cost of medical coverage and the lack of insurance coverage?
And Toni, before you do that, excuse me for cutting you off, but I think in your former life you were in nursing, right?
That's correct. I am still a nurse. Yes, I am.
Put that out there, but go ahead.
That's correct. That's correct. I am still an RN, registered nurse. I graduated from UAB, and but as far as addressing the cost of healthcare, I'm with you. I'm in the same boat that you're in, and I'm not in that particular industry per se. So I have always been of the mindset that something has to be done. We can't continue things the way they are, but we all have to come to the table. We all have to own and take responsibility and own our own part in it. And that's every aspect of the industry. When it comes to insurance companies, doctors, pharmaceutical companies, we as a consumer, we all have to come to the table and own our part and stop pointing fingers. But we have to do that with an honest heart and not looking at the dollar. So that's part of the problem. Everybody wants to protect their own entity and their own industry. and want to have control without collaboration and without coming to the table with an honest heart to listen to each other, to come together, to work together. Now, that's just my 2 cents. Nobody's asked me. That's just my 2 cents. And until we do that, we're going to have an issue. It's not the Republican Party. It's not the Democratic Party. We are humans. We are the body of Christ. And he's put us here to show forth his glory and to work together and stop following the dollar and seek him for wisdom and say, Lord, what is this supposed to look like? And until we can put down and get humble before him, we're going to have a problem. So you didn't ask for all that, but that's where I'm coming from. That's kind of how I live my life. Now, when it comes down to how me and Mercy Deliverance Ministries going to address this, we're going to have to work within the system like everybody else does. We're looking for volunteers to help us cover costs. We, and like I said, I haven't delved into, God hadn't got me into that full aspect of paying and that type thing and that medical aspect of it. But as far as what I've done so far, we're looking for volunteers. We're looking for, they're going to be lab costs. They're going to be, and I have a budget for all of that type thing. And to answer your question, I haven't worked through that yet. I haven't walked through that yet. He hadn't taken me there yet. But regardless of what it is, he's going to take care of it. So if it comes up with him giving me some miracle idea that's going to help us all, then you'll know it. But right now, I'm in the same boat that you all are in. I'm going to have to work within the same system that you're working in. And those costs in Hawaii, they're a whole lot more than they are here. So again, I'm going to need the public to come along with us. I'm going to need the private sector to come along with us. We are, like I said, we are humans. And so we're going to all have to work together and be our brother's keeper and do the best that God has called us to do as individuals.
Okay. Well, I think we're about out of time here. Toni, let me thank you for coming on. And what I will say to you is, as you get down the road and you get your bus going and all that stuff, perhaps we'll have you come back and you'll have photos and video and we can see how this works. And it would probably give some of us a clearer picture of how we can be of service to you. So,
well, I do thank you. And you are correct. I love to come back again. I thank you for the time and opportunity to speak to you today.
Okay, thank you. I want to thank the audience for joining us. As always, I want to thank Mychal and Barbara. My next week's guest is all the way from Harlem, New York. He's one of the best writers I know, a man I've known for many, many years. As a matter of fact, I was his football coach when he was in high school. His name is Randall Horton, and he is a brilliant writer. He's a winner of the Gwendolyn Brooks Poetry Award and the Bea Gonzalez Prize for Poetry. He has an MFA from Chicago State University and a PhD from SUNY Albany, and is a tenured professor at the University of New Haven. So I'm looking forward to having Randall Horton here. I want to leave you with these words based on what we just heard from Toni. And that is, people will forget what you said. People will forget what you did. But people will never forget how you made them feel. So thanks, Mychal, Barbara, Toni, and Mercy Deliverance Ministries. I want to thank Best Girl for the sponsorship. I want to thank Emily Hedrick, the communicator and our producer. And we will see you all next week. Enjoy yourself and make every day count. Peace.